Lin Ji smiled and said to Vincent, "It's Colin. He thinks I'm an evil spirit. That's why he hired you to get rid of the evil spirit." "Right," Lin Ji sighed in his heart, thinking, no wonder. Why did he hesitate to say that Colin misunderstood me as an evil spirit? So he secretly invited a priest to come. While Vincent, sitting opposite, was a bit shocked. Dynamic. Lin Ji is still lost in his own thoughts. This is really making me not know what to do to make people think well of me. Vincent sitting across from her is shocked and has her own thoughts of himself. Vincent wondered, does he know this? There is no reason for Colin to reveal information to him. So why would he know? Is it a trap or? Vincent's hand on his thigh held tightly. Lin Ji looked at Vincent opposite and thought to himself, look at the expression on this face. It feels like I can sympathize with this priest. His tolerant face is hidden. That feeling of shame and awkwardness makes it very difficult for me to speak directly. Lin Ji began to think in confusion. I invited the priest so much that it ended up in a funny situation like this. Lin Ji rubbed his head. His red eyes flashed slightly. Colin, this is really a bit unreasonable. Colin on the other side was reading forbidden books for children. A bit startled. Lin Ji sitting across from Vincent, he told Moon to go make tea. And he was thinking in his heart, from the previous policeman's tone, that's speculation. It's clear that Colin has talked nonsense to many people in such an eloquent way. This priest must also be very worried. So he found another litigant. Himself. To negotiate and find a solution. Lin Ji sighed and looked at Vincent across from him and said, "This is a big misunderstanding. Priest." Lin Ji smiled so brightly that his eyes didn't hurt and began to explain. "Even though I don't know why he thinks like that. It's clear that I'm just an ordinary bookstore owner." Lin Ji opened his mouth to speak, showing white teeth and a red tongue, saying, "Flesh and blood and a heart to help people." Lin Ji's eyes stared at Vincent. "Moreover, I also helped him." Lin Ji pointed at her. "That's right. 2 days ago, the police from the central area came here and heard Colin talking nonsense. I also explained it to them. They can testify for me." And Vincent thought of the 3 supervisors. Was dragged away through Colin's story. Those 3 policemen were clearly lying motionless and then being dragged out of here. Is he implying that he will also fall into the same fate? Lin Ji on this side pulled up his chair and stood up. He thought to himself, let's see his reaction. It seems like just talking is not enough. Maybe it would be better to show him accurate and convincing evidence. Lin Ji walked towards Vincent and said, "Priest, look, here is the evidence that proves my innocence." Lin Ji held up the monster statue and introduced it to Vincent. At that time I didn't have time to tell the 3 policemen next to that. This is a souvenir that an old guest gave me. The ghost statue stone can be used to ward off evil spirits. It is an essential item to have in the house. But in Vincent's eyes, the monster statue emitted a green aura and Lin Ji's talking face looked like a devil. Lin Ji raised his voice and said, "If I really am that so-called evil spirit, why would someone put is that okay with the demon statue at the checkout counter?" Vincent's eyes widened slightly, his pupils constricted. Vincent trembled as he looked at the statue that was close to his face. Vincent could see that this statue could turn into a giant. That statue walked on countless corpses and walked towards Vincent. Lin Ji smiled, his big hand held Vincent's hand. Technical priest, the art of making stone demon statues is really not bad. That old guest of mine spent a lot of effort to be able to polish a finished product like this. Lin Ji's lips moved, revealing white teeth. "Come here, feel free to touch it." Lin Ji pulled Vincent's hand to touch the statue, making Vincent a bit startled. The hand placed on Vincent's statue. There was a red aura coming out. Vincent seemed to fall into an unknown space. He stood silently, his hands touching the void. Countless flashes of red air. Vincent screamed loudly. Vincent seemed to see a pit of blood under his feet. Countless faces, lying in a pool of blood including both hands and feet. For a moment it seemed that Vincent could clearly see the demon stone statue with blood-red evil eyes. The souls of the corpses reflecting back the image of the row. Hundreds of thousands of miserable dead people were writhing and screaming. Vincent could see countless red human figures that had tragically died. They kept sticking out sharp claws towards Vincent. Lin Ji's words made Vincent cry, pulled out of her illusion. Lin Ji said, "Valuing someone else's gift like this is enough to prove that I'm a good person. Right?" Vincent was startled. Lin Ji smiled with her eyes narrowed and held out her hand to Vincent. "Introducing, and these are roses I grew myself. Don't you think it looks very beautiful? But when Lin Ji looked at the rose that had withered, there was nothing more withered. The petals had also fallen onto the table. Lin Ji was silent. He thought to himself, there is no other way. Although tricking a blind person is possible, it's a bit dishonest. But in order to clear up this misunderstanding, I can only lie with my eyes wide open. Lin Ji thought. I hope you understand me. Priest. Lin Ji closed his eyes tightly. His face was a bit gray. He still smiled and explained as if it was nothing, as you can see this flower is very beautiful. It is blooming and full of life. Vincent's hand holding the string the pass was taken by Lin Ji again. Lin Ji said, this can prove that I am a person who loves life very much. Vincent was startled when his hand was taken again. Lin Ji held Vincent's hand and said, you too, I can feel it. This is a very beautiful flower. Vincent's hand was placed by Lin Ji to touch the rose. The eyes in the flower stared at Vincent. The moment Vincent's finger touched the petal, his inner mind, which had not yet calmed down, was felt again. The horror invaded again. Only Vincent saw an eye staring at him, followed by countless long sharp teeth surrounding Vincent. Feeling like flower petals were mixing with his blood and flesh, could feel the wetness and blood-red threads of the indescribable spherical objects. Vincent's eyes, as if there were countless blue eyes looking. Of the shaped objects, the demand was indescribable. It was as if countless eyeballs were staring. Vincent was startled and shouted loudly, that's enough. Vincent pulled his hand away from Lin Ji's hand. The necklace also fell to the ground. The necklace fell to the ground with a clicking sound. Vincent pursed his sweaty lips and thought to himself, I was wrong. I was really wrong. Vincent stood far away from Lin Ji, looking at Lin Ji's shadow emitting a strange black aura over there. So the problem here is not the bookstore itself or some supernatural thing. Vincent looked at Lin Ji opposite, came to the conclusion, this bookstore owner is the biggest problem in this place. Lin Ji opposite rubbed his arm and asked, all right, how good? Lin Ji's eyes flashed, turned on the red light and looked at Vincent and said, now we can use this convincing evidence to explain to Colin. Lin Ji bent down and picked up the necklace. He held the necklace towards Vincent and said, Lin, you dropped this thing. Vincent trembled and didn't dare move. Vincent could imagine countless black auras surrounding him. Vincent looked at the necklace in front of his eyes, chanting in his heart and asking, the moon is high in the sky. What should I do now? Do I need to go out there to get it back? Is it right here now? Vincent's whole body trembling non-stop. Thinking, no, I don't dare, this person must have done it on purpose. He must be feeling happy right now when he sees this awkward state of mind. Lin Ji, who was on the other side, was extremely confused and still smiled and closed his eyes, waiting for Vincent. At this moment, Lin Ji opened his eyes and stared at Vincent. He looked at the necklace and asked, what's wrong with you? Lin Ji looked at Vincent standing still, thinking, why don't you come and take it? I gave it to you. I'm here before you. At this moment, Lin Ji realized something, so he quickly covered his mouth and thought to himself, no way. I'm so worried about explaining that I almost forgot that this priest is blind. I'm holding it up like this. It's a bit inappropriate. I have to make up for your mistakes quickly to avoid making customers run away in fear. Lin Ji put her hand to her mouth and coughed. Lin Ji placed the necklace on her table and looked at Vincent. Then I'll put it here. You can pick it up yourself. Vincent looked at Lin Ji's back as she walked away. There was silence for a while. Then Vincent slowly walked towards the necklace. Lin Ji walked behind his desk, pulled out a chair and said, priest, your face looks a little bad. Is something wrong? Vincent smiled and said, no. Probably due to lack of sleep. Because I was in a hurry to find my way here, so I still haven't had enough sleep. Vincent looked at the necklace in front of his eyes and thought, now the exam equipment is the only method I can use is in the opponent's hands. Those words are absolutely threatening and provocative. But the saddest thing is that I'm a priest who's not good at actual combat. Without the holy emblem to assist me, I wouldn't even dare go out and get the holy emblem from there. Vincent's eyes were looking up and he could see Lin Ji sitting in that chair over there, and the chair was like a giant skeleton. Vincent trembled and thought, the current situation is so desperate that I want to bury my head in the sand. The owner of this bookstore is absolutely a high-level powerhouse. In Vincent's eyes, Lin Ji was sitting over there with his legs crossed like a giant silhouette, and he was extremely small. Vincent asked himself, what does he want anyway? Vincent looked bewildered at the monster statue in front of him and asked himself, what does the bookstore owner want? Vincent's whole body trembled in bewilderment. Thinking, even in the books in the church library, it's rare to find documents or artifacts of this level. Moreover, inside that demon statue also contains a few hundreds of supernatural souls were imprisoned. All of them died in extreme pain and hatred when the Black Wizard used a semi-fusion technique to merge into one. Vincent's eyes could be seen. Countless of those dead souls. Vincent thought, after gathering a huge source of energy, their souls will be trapped in this stone statue to act as a control center for strength and willpower. The moon eye of this demon stone statue is equivalent to a panic-level elite warrior. Vincent seemed to be tightly grasped by the monster's huge hand, and the monster's head was sticking out its tongue in preparation. Eat him. Vincent was scared. He hugged himself, his whole body trembling, his mouth opened wide, thinking, in other words, once the demon stone is activated, there is no doubt I will die. Vincent pursed his lips tightly, sweat pouring down his face, thinking, soul materialization, this is a type of magic that only high-level black wizards can learn. Vincent can imagine Wild with his snake raising his hand. The man who created the monster statue thought to himself. The black wizard who created this demon statue must also be an extremely cruel person and a murderer. Vincent looked at Lin Ji's eyes again, those eyes with red pupils. But whoever made this demon stone statue? The owner of this bookstore owns it. Vincent, after thinking for a while, tremblingly came to the conclusion in his heart, it must also be a supernatural character. Cold sweat flowed from Vincent's forehead and he turned to analyze and evaluate the withered rose. In Vincent's eyes, that rose was extremely huge. Vincent thought, and there's that rose with that scary appearance. For some reason it gives me a feeling of fear, like facing an abyss. Vincent could see the rose's eyes staring at him, and the rose also had a tongue waiting to bite Vincent. It's like a greedy mouth that wants to swallow everything. Vincent saw the countless teeth and its red mouth and thought to himself, once it bites and swallows it, there will definitely be no return. The danger level of this rose is definitely above the demon statue. ! Quote. Vincent trembled and hugged himself, coming to the conclusion in his heart, Colin has trapped me. There's nothing like asking me to exercise a spirit. It's clearly tricking me into sacrificing myself to this evil god. This is truly an act. The cruelty of the hunting dogs. Vincent was extremely scared. At this moment Lin Ji spoke again. This is really a big problem. Colin has really gone too far this time. Lin Ji sat cross-legged on the chair and sighed. I don't know what he's like. Being born like this is a serious misunderstanding. It's really causing trouble for others. Lin Ji put his finger on his eyes and said, but now everything is better. I hope you will make everything happen. Come out today and tell Colin. I hope this misunderstanding can end quickly. Lin Ji smiled and raised his hand to Vincent. Priest. Because you are a smart person. You probably understand what I mean. You also see that I have nothing like an evil spirit. Right. Vincent on this side was completely scared. In his heart, Vincent hugged his grey face and thought, you may not be an evil spirit, but you are definitely a more terrifying existence than the evil spirit. Save my life. I want to go back to church. Vincent sat still on the chair and replied, The large bookstore. Vincent and Lin Ji sat facing each other in the room silently without speaking. Vincent clutched his own collar trying to catch his breath and thought to himself, why does my throat hurt so much? Even my whole body is shaking. I'm suddenly so scared and panicked that I'm so impulsive. Vincent's whole body felt like a TV with a crackling sound. No. That's not true. This is more like a feeling created by the body than by the influence of the mind. That feeling like I was with a shadow made me feel scared for several days. Now, Vincent's eyes behind the black blindfold were extremely confused. This is a sudden surge of fear. Vincent gasped in fear. Is it due to the constant effects of stress? It's really uncomfortable. The feeling is even more intense than before. Even the muscles are starting to show signs of cramping. Vincent's hand reached out, trembling incessantly. The dim white light in front of me is just an illusion. Right. Clearly the black blindfold had taken out Vincent's eyes, but Vincent could clearly see Lin Ji's figure. Vincent, thinking, no, that can't be like that. I have to calm down. What's wrong with me? Vincent with his mouth open. Breathing heavily, breathing too short. Too rapid, heavy panting, lungs slightly convulsing. Heart. No, heart is beating fast. The heart inside Vincent's body was beating loudly. Loudly, but without stopping. Vincent fell into a spiral of his own thoughts, feeling scared of the skin. The flesh is itchy and numb like an ant bite. I'm not even awake enough to think. Vincent quickly comforted himself in his heart. I can't. I have to think quickly about what to do now. Okay. Vincent's hands were shaking non-stop. Me. What should I do? What should I do? This is really annoying. Think. Vincent trembled and took out a cigarette and a lighter from his pocket. Vincent finally knew what he had done. I want to smoke. Suddenly startled, he suddenly woke up. He seemed to escape his own reverie. Vincent's eyes felt like something was pressing open to wake him up again. Vincent was a bit bewildered for the north time. He looked at his trembling hand and gave Lin Ji a forced smile. I will do that. I will definitely explain it clearly to Colin. Lin Ji was silent. He was a bit 3-point. Vincent on this side turned on the cup of fire and lit a cigarette while trembling. I thought, please rest assured. As long as I explain, I'm sure he will have a new view of you. The moment he saw Vincent's cigarette, he breathed a sigh of relief. His mind finally working again. Vincent trembled, unable to hold his cigarette, and looked at Lin Ji opposite. The owner of this bookstore must want to hide his identity from the neighbors. I just need to promise him to help hide it. That's all, that I will not be destroyed. Vincent's eyes behind the black cloth seemed to be muffled, but will an existence like the Secret Tower and the Truth Society just ignore it? Do I need to report this problem to the church? At this time, Vincent wasn't paying attention when a hand appeared behind Vincent and a voice said, "The priest in my bookstore prohibits smoking." Lin Ji's hand patted Vincent's shoulder, making Vincent startle. Vincent, as if struck by lightning, turned his head to look at Lin Ji and shouted, "I'm sorry." In Vincent's eyes, Lin Ji's face was extremely angry. Her eyes narrowed and her mouth tightened. Vincent was so scared that he dropped his cigarette and shouted loudly, "Ah!" Vincent dropped the cigarette in his hand and shouted loudly, "I'm really sorry. I didn't mean it." Lin Ji's eyes flashed red and asked, "You just can't control what you're doing, what's right?" "Priest." Vincent was startled when he heard that for the north time. Lin Ji turned away and said, "Recently, have you often felt uneasy and sweated while sleeping? Emotions change erratically, often tremble uncontrollably, feel like breathing is inhibited. Whole body convulsions." Lin Ji turned to look at Vincent and concluded, "Moreover, especially cravings medicine." Lin Ji's finger was pointing to the medicine box in Vincent's hand. Vincent was a bit startled when he heard Lin Ji describe his symptoms. Vincent turned to look at the medicine box in his hand and remained silent. And Lin Ji on this side also thought, "That's true. From the moment this priest entered the bookstore, I discovered his mental state was not very good. I originally thought he was simply in a bad state due to lack of sleep or too much work pressure." Lin Ji pulled out her chair to look at Vincent and mentally assessed. But over the course of our conversation, his small expressions became more and more strange, and even a reaction similar to a drug addiction appeared. Until now, when he took out his cigarette, I basically seemed to be sure. Lin Ji looked at Vincent and came to an extremely certain conclusion: the priest of this dome church is an addict. Lin Ji sat down on the chair and looked at Vincent opposite. Still constantly evaluating in his heart, but he himself didn't realize it. He seemed bewildered. This shows that there is a high possibility that he was framed by someone else. Harm. If so, then the problem becomes serious. At this time, Lin Ji raised his voice and asked Vincent, "Priest, where did the cigarette in your hand come from?" Vincent was suddenly startled. Vincent stood up and shouted, "What do you mean? You are the problem with this cigarette. It can't be. You know it's all thanks to this cigarette that I am the only one who is able to exist." After seeing Vincent Lin Ji's panicked reaction, he was immediately sure of one thing in his heart. I tried to make him unconsciously realize that there was a problem with this cigarette. And even had a reaction similar to heroin addiction. But he absolutely believes in the origin of this cigarette. That's why it makes people feel chills. Lin Ji clasped her hands in front of her chest and looked at Vincent, who was breathing a sigh of relief in front of her. Thinking, no matter what its origin is, the only people who can create this kind of situation must be those with extremely cruel hearts. Lin Ji reminded Vincent, "For those wild-hearted people, you will never know what they are thinking. No one in this world can completely trust. Okay. Nothing is impossible, priest." Vincent on the other side still had sweat on his face but still listened silently to what Lin Ji said. Lin Ji continued, "How about you answer me a few questions first, then any Vincent cried, 2 tears in his heart, thinking, why do you still ask me? Do I still dare not answer? Vincent replied tremblingly, Lin Ji sat opposite like a shadow with red eyes flashing at Vincent. He began to question, Mr. Priest, where do your cigarettes come from? Vincent remained silent and did not answer. Vincent thought back, even though the transaction of supernatural items is confidential, the other party is at least a destruction-level powerhouse, so I shouldn't have to keep it a secret anymore. Vincent tore open the cigarette packaging and inside there was printed the symbol of the Chapman family. Vincent replied to Lin Ji, Ash Chamber of Commerce. This is what I bought from Ash Chamber of Commerce. It's called Than Nwet Lao and it's just recently opened for sale. For now, it's still an experimental item distributed to all church officials to try out. Lin Ji heard the familiar name and he froze. An hour. The 7th Parish Church Dome, a large church with countless people below listening to the person sitting above talking. The person sitting in the middle placed his hand on a medicine box, the other person raised his voice, pink lips moved. This is the Holy Moon Elder provided by the Ash Chamber of Commerce to the church. For now, it will only be distributed to selected clerics in the church. The other girl has yellow hair and wears a veil to cover her head, revealing her beautiful face with blue pupils and super huge breasts in front of her. The other girl said, through testing its effectiveness has been recognized by me. Smoking it is beneficial for improving efficiency. Fruit of meditation, strengthens the connection between believers and moonlight. This girl is the 7th parish of the Dome Church Apostle Regret Moon Vanessa. Vanessa glanced at a group of people below and said, suck away believers, this is your destiny who believes in the moonlight. Vanessa's smooth white feet were exposed. Looking at the medicine boxes distributed to each person below. And at that time Vincent was also the one to receive that medicine box. The present Vincent held the medicine box tightly in his hand and thought to himself, this is a supernatural item that the 7th Great Apostle has personally tested. The origin is also very worthy trust. That's why recently when my meditation effectiveness decreased I just thought it was my problem. Vincent's whole body collapsed. He sat there trembling as if sinking into darkness, thinking, but not yet once suspected there was a problem with this smoke. Vincent can imagine Vanessa as a puppet manipulator for clerical staff. Obedience is mandatory. Apostles manage priests who are employees. The divine function is at the 3rd level, which means part of the will of the moonlight. And for low-level divine officers, it is absolute authority. A drop of Vincent's sweat fell, but the bookstore owner's one word says it all about this situation. Is there really a problem? Vincent shook his head vigorously, chasing away his own thoughts, and said, no, this is really impossible. Vincent tried to defend. The reputation of the Ash Chamber of Commerce has never had any problems. Moreover, this is an item that the Great Apostle has personally endorsed. Other priests I know also say that it is effective. Old Than Nwet is extremely good. It seems like I'm the only one experiencing unpleasant symptoms. Lin Ji sat across from Vincent. He thought of the little girl Kiri that he had met 3 years ago. How did the Ash Chamber of Commerce never expect to hear this familiar name from the mouth of a priest? Lin Ji put her hand on her chin in thought. But it's not difficult to understand the great energy of the Ash Chamber of Commerce from being able to easily provide fake identities in Nokia. Vincent thought of Ji Jishu, who was also equally rich. Although overall the Ash Merchant Guild's energy is not as terrible as Lowe's resources, it is still a trading organization with a huge rank. If we take an example, in a popular and modern way, Low Resources is a huge business that can produce all kinds of items in different fields that usually the Ash Association is ex-Bao. Lin Ji imagined the small Kiri supporting the entire sales system and thought to herself, in this nation's largest sales platform, such an item specifically provided for church officials appears. It seems like it's also nothing strange. Lin Ji sat across from Vincent. If it was the Ash Merchant Guild, I would be able to understand why this priest has such unconditional trust in the quality of this smoke. Even though there is no impression created by knowing Kiri, Ash Chamber of Commerce is also an extremely famous and trustworthy shopping platform. Not to mention for this priest, there is also the apostle's authenticity and the example of others. Lin Ji's eyes narrowed slightly. He thought, however, his condition is real. Lin Ji looked at Vincent sitting silently opposite, thinking, it seems like this is more complicated than I thought. We need to pay attention. Let's investigate the situation. Lin Ji's hand tapped on the armrest of the chair and he raised his voice to ask Vincent, what did I say? Nothing is impossible. I'll go inquire about the situation on Ash's side later. But right now the most important thing is it's you. Lin Ji's face seemed to be half in darkness and half in light. His eyes were red and his whole body seemed to be covered with red gas. He raised his voice and asked, "Priest, who are you willing to trust?" Quote. Vincent sat opposite in fear. His face also sunk into the half-white, half-black darkness. Vincent's teeth clenched tightly. His eyes behind Vincent's black blindfold shrank and asked, "Who am I willing to trust in my heart?" Sitting in this bookstore surrounded by dark auras, Vincent asked himself, very clearly the implication in this question is only one. Vincent, thinking of Vanessa, is to trust the Dome Church. Then Vincent looked at Lin Ji sitting in front of him with flashing eyes, or should you trust the bookstore owner? Vincent's hand placed on his thigh tightly clenched. Moonlight, what should I do? Please give me peace. Black auras began to gradually appear right next to Vincent. Vincent looked bewildered towards the rope, that star necklace. Vincent clenched his fist and put it on his thigh. Thinking, react a bit. I clearly never let the holy emblem leave my hand. Even when I sleep I wear the holy emblem. Maybe seeing that Vincent was a very conscientious priest, he had to sleep with a moon-shaped blanket in his hand while holding the necklace. Vincent swallowed his saliva and thought, I felt like I was betrayed by something important. Quote. Vincent clutched his shirt, so uncomfortable. Vincent wanted to reach out to take another cigarette, but his shaking hand suddenly stopped. Vincent looked down at the cigarette box as if it were emitting light. A drop of Vincent's sweat fell onto the cigarette box. Vincent can see my own reflection in the medicine box. I can't help but admit that I am indeed very unusual. Just seeing this smoke makes me experience that extremely uncomfortable feeling again. No thoughts. I thought the sensory disturbance became more obvious. It was like there were a lot of ants crawling on my skin. Itchy and uncomfortable. Even my internal organs started to feel a bit itchy. Vincent clenched his teeth and sweat flowed out, with the constant trembling of, how terrible and obvious is this feeling? But I can't doubt the church. Vincent seemed to be sitting in the center of that moon and star. The education I received did not allow me to have doubts about the church. The medicine at this moment fell to the ground. Vincent hugged his own head. I shouted, what should I do? What should I do? Vincent raised his voice to answer Lin Ji, I don't know. I really don't know. Vincent held his head and sat down looking at Lin Ji's face. Please give me instructions. The pendant lay on the table without moving. Lin Ji sitting opposite just sighed. He closed his eyes then opened his eyes. His pupils reflected Vincent's image inside. Lin Ji thought, hey. This look of pain when falling into self-doubt. Lin Ji seemed to see the wild of the past matching the image of Vincent in front of him. Lin Ji thought, it's like seeing old Wild 2 years ago. Because of the collapse of confidence in himself and feeling stuck, he almost took the path of self-destruction. But luckily he walked into this bookstore and met him. Good people, enthusiastic and kind, happy to help everyone. At that time, after just a few words, Lin Ji wild chicken porridge was psychologically manipulated. Lin Ji thought, now his life is also back on the right track. The whole person is much more spiritual. Convinced that in the not too distant future, he may soon reconnect with his old friend Joseph, once again writing the story of their intimate friendship. Lin Ji stood up from the chair and slowly walked towards her. Vincent in front of him, but compared to Wild, this priest seems much more miserable. For better or worse, the old king managed to maintain his face when they first met. Then gradually revealed his suffering and impasse. And the priest is now on the verge of collapse. Lin Ji's footsteps made a clicking sound in his heart. Still his own thoughts, but it's no wonder he made a godly employee. Officials have to doubt their church. Even if they are just people in the church, they are obviously a bit cruel. But the pain of independent thinking is inevitable. Lin Ji put his hand on Vincent's shoulder, thinking in my heart, if there really is a problem within the Dome Church, then let the good priest in front of me be able to run for the parishioners in the wind and dust for miles. And be willing to take care of their thoughts. Other people, choosing to answer Colin gracefully to this place except spirit, directly continuing to suffer torment is truly cruel. Lin Ji leaned closer to Vincent's ear and said, relax. Now everything else can be put aside for now. We can investigate later. The most important thing is your immediate physical condition. Vincent's whole body felt like he was struck by lightning and sat still listening to Lin Ji say, yes, maybe you rarely smoke. Based on what you said, there's nothing unusual about your colleagues. In fact, It's the opposite. Lin Ji looked at Vincent and said, maybe it's because they smoke more often. Instead, under reassurance, old Than Nguyen's expression seems very normal. How do you feel now? Vincent removed his hands covering his head and breathed heavily. Sweat pouring down his whole body. Vincent now looked like a dying soul. About to disappear, Vincent's whole body emitted a blue light. Vincent said, I saw the moonlight in an illusion. This is inherently impossible. Lin Ji sighed hearing that, it is indeed impossible. Blind man, look at this. This isn't a dream. It's just an illusion, but it's gotten to this point and it really seems a bit serious. Lin Ji withdrew his hand from Vincent's shoulder and said, stop using Saint Nguyen Lao, come on. This might cause you to show some unusual symptoms. Because to prevent you from causing trouble. Find something to do. Lin Ji said, walking towards the bookshelf. It's also good for moving one's attention. Lin Ji, choosing a book on the bookshelf, said, like reading a few books. Lin Ji finished choosing a book for Vincent. He said, as I see it, then this book is very suitable for you. Maybe you can see something else in it. The name of the book is unknown. But the other book emits white light. Vincent's whole body was bewildered when he saw that book. He shouted, this is. Vincent's whole body seemed to be immersed in that light. This is. Vincent's eyes now clearly saw a spot of yellow-white light in the distance. It's really different. I only saw Lin Ji on the other side holding a book while the other book emitted golden light. Vincent's eyes behind the black cloth looked forward like sparkling stars. Vincent's moon vision. The moment that book left the bookshelf, a bright light like a fire flared up. Bright red like the sun, almost illuminating the entire bookstore. The owner of the bookstore seemed to be holding a flame in his hand or a small-sized sun. Vincent could see Lin Ji standing there holding a book emitting light golden light. That burning fire seemed to make people feel the immense power contained within. Lin Ji's eyes flashed red, blending into that golden light along with the strong divinity spreading from the inside out. Vincent was startled to see that scene. Vincent thought to himself, I'm really familiar with this feeling. This power. With it, Vincent couldn't help but believe his eyes right now. The feeling of the eye of the moon is not wrong. The power in this book has the same origin as the supernatural power inside me. As a priest of the Dome Church, I have felt this familiar power countless times. The large door, the moon shines on the silhouette of a person sitting and praying with the moonlight. Every day meditating and praying with the moonlight, the soul and the holy emblem resonate. When thoughts sink into the ether area of the moonlight, that white, golden light appears like a thread. The grace of the moonlight prayer when performing the narrative of healing the sick. Feel the existence of disaster. Have the protection of the moonlight. When fighting head-on with all evil things, this magical power will appear like a shadow. Each employee divine servants belong to the Dome Church. Inside there is such supernatural power coming from above the dome that bestows the divine power of moonlight to pious people. Vincent's whole body seemed to be surrounded by that power. He thought to himself, but it's very clear, the divinity that the book in front of me radiates is even stronger than this power. It also has aggressiveness and vibrant vitality. More intense. As if after highly condensing a large amount of moonlight, divine power suddenly ignited. Vincent was very bewildered. He looked at the light in front of him, unable to stop, the source of my own thoughts. What makes people scared is that I seem to vaguely feel this feeling of the same origin. It's not because of two, this kind of power comes from the same place. But one kind of it comes from another kind. So who comes from whom? Vincent's eyes behind the black cloth closed tightly and thought. I can't think anymore. I have to force myself to ignore this realization. When Vincent opened his eyes to look, Vincent could feel that this bookstore had changed. Vincent saw the necklace on the table emitting light. Vincent was startled. His eyes were filled with bloodshot eyes, his pupils constricted. My holy emblem is glowing. Is it responding to the power and divinity on that book? Vincent stared at the pendant on the table. At first it emitted a small golden light. Then a large burning golden light. That light burned loudly. Vincent jealously bit his shirt tightly. Tears flowing from his heart. In the end. Who is your master? It's clear that the light of another divinity is shining. But the results are even brighter than usual when I meditate and pray or perform magic. It's like you're laughing at me for not being able to please him. I'm so unwilling. The side of the necklace emitted light. That light slowly crawled down the table and crawled slowly towards Vincent's feet. That light surrounded Vincent like burning Vincent in the middle. Vincent was affected and his whole body trembled. Trembling, in the body something is pouring in. That's right, in the Holy Emblem Hoa district with a part of his soul. It can be considered as an intermediary transmitting the power of the book through the Holy Emblem injected into what about my body. Vincent's hand trembled. This power is so strong, so full of life that I can't stop it. This feeling of being forced into my body by force that I can't resist. So comfortable. Vincent felt like he was falling deep into the ocean, up and down. My whole body felt comfortable. Like after a busy day soaking in hot water. My body felt so warm. I felt uncomfortable and anxious. All the distractions are gone. How long has it been since I've experienced this feeling of relaxation? Vincent spread his arms so that his face was submerged deep in the water. It's just like the feeling of being in the water. Home. The moonlight divine power with this warm power has no distance at all. Even as if the river flowing into the sea cheered with excitement. Vincent slowly opened his eyes through the black cloth, staring outside. When Vincent saw the water he was startled. This is unbelievable. Is this the real God? Vincent fell into another place again. This place does not have clear blue seawater, but a strange red color. A red aura hovering around Vincent's face blurred. A smile appeared. Vincent was startled. The other voice spoke in Vincent's ear. The important thing is you. Spirit, are you? Who do you agree to trust? Vincent imagined himself being swallowed by a mouth of light and thought, so that's what the bookstore owner meant. My previous understanding was too shallow. Vincent tried to raise his hand to hold on to the thing in front of him. The bookstore owner is not asking about the matter related to old Saint Noet between the church and him who I will choose to trust. But is asking me when I see another situation, especially when I face fear that has overturned my previous perception. I will choose what to believe. Vincent's hand caught in the air. He thought, moonlight above. Is this punishment for my half-hearted thinking? Please forgive me. I must have been bewitched, otherwise why would I find it unreasonable? Vincent fell into the darkness and he was the only light. It seems that the power on that book is the source of divine power. Moonlight in the darkness. That yellow thing shattered and shattered little by little. Vincent liked being held by a girl in a white shirt with red hair who covered her face. Vincent looked at the woman in front of her in bewilderment. The woman in front of her tied her hair up high, but her face was covered. Someone's voice sounded like it was echoing in my ears, in the darkness of my long life. Woman holding Vincent's hand and dancing. The books I used to read versus what people read to me. Everything fell apart, become a giant brilliant lighthouse. The other girl pulled Vincent's hand even though Vincent was floating. But the girl was still dancing. Show me the deepest path of life and soul. Vincent jerk. I suddenly woke up from my dream. Vincent was sitting kneeling on the ground. Lin Ji with his face in the dark holding a book walking towards Vincent saying, blind people's minds must be clear and reading books is an extremely good way to help the soul maintain pure peace. Lin Ji looked at Vincent kneeling on the ground. Books are a ladder of human progress. Also a path that can be nurtured and can help people calm down. Vincent sat kneeling on the ground, the edge of the book cover tapped on his shoulder. Lin Ji secretly thought of something. He thought of a blind woman. This book comes from Helen Keller, from the story of the great woman. There is no doubts. Recorded her life story of how a congenitally blind and deaf person gradually found hope in life. And used a positive and optimistic attitude to deal with everything. Even live more brilliantly than most healthy people. Lin Ji gave the other book to Vincent. This is without a doubt the best book to give to a blind person. Lin Ji raised his voice and said, actually the only thing you need to believe in is yourself. Read this book, then make your own judgment. That book emits light that can make people dazzling. Lin Ji said, you need to find your true self. Step out of the darkness and loneliness. Use the eyes in your heart to see reality, embrace the light. Vincent hear that. Shut up, replied. But Vincent reached out to take the book. Vincent looked at the cover of the book and thought to himself, Sun Scripture. This is the name of this book. The writing on this book seems to be wedge-shaped script sculpted in some ancient time, made up of dotted lines and a few other symbols. Vincent touched the lines on the book. No doubt clearly I have never come into contact with these things and cannot understand its meaning. But when you put your hand to touch the word in your heart, the meaning of the word will naturally appear. A red light like a tornado appeared. The light of moonlight comes from the sun, so the moonlight's certain divine power originates from the solar scriptures. Vincent seemed to stand on the ground surrounded by a red aura in front of a golden aura. But no one has ever believed in the sun. After the first era passed, light and fire and the sun disappeared in a dream. From then on, Azir entered the second era without light or fire. That was the rule under King Candela, until the end of the Second Era raised the wall of mist. No one spoke of the Captain of the Sun anymore. The black cloth fell to the ground. Vincent used double my pupils look forward. A long staircase leading up to where the sun shines, if the sun is truly a god. Vincent stood low looking at the sun above and asked, so what is the moonlight now? What is it now? Moonlight is the only god born in the world that exists to this day, still stopping inside the dreamscape. A vast cathedral decorated with white and above the shade painted with other colors together. This place is the Dome Church of St. Laurent's Monastery. Elementary history class related to the supernatural. Inside the room the teacher snapped his fingers. White aura hovered. The teacher lectured that the sun at the beginning of the era the second was extinguished inside the dreamscape. The black-clothed teacher standing on the blackboard lecturing, leading to the beginning of the second era along with the destruction of the giant race. This is the truth of the mythical age was hidden by supernatural people. The teacher raised his head to look at all the students below. Behind him was a blackboard full of words saying, the Dome Church founded by the first pope in the epoch third. Since birth until now, you have always believed in moonlight. As future qualified staff of the Dome Church, you should maintain your worship and faith in moonlight. Even though the sun is shining, the sky has been extinguished. But the moonlight lasts forever, still illuminating the world and giving strength to believers. Vincent was also one of the students attending this class when he was young. Before today, I always thought that the sun and moonlight were two different gods. Although they are related to each other, they are not that close until now. Vincent held the book and stood at the bookstore, his whole body surrounded by a green aura, thinking, the knowledge and perceptions inherent in the past are overwhelmed by the divinity in this book in front of me. Even vaguely controlled, my body and soul are so shaken that I can break through this book to answer the questions that keep arising in my heart. Vincent's sweat fell to the ground. Where is the problem? What should I do now? Vincent sat kneeling on the ground, his whole body falling into confusion. The bookstore owner's words just now seemed to have another meaning. The long, late night that he said could have been referring to the second ancient era. Without light, without fire, Vincent imagined. Lin Ji standing on a large rock above his head was a pair of red eyes looking. It seems that the scope of my previous prediction is a bit small. Could it be that the master's true identity is the bookstore owner actually a god-level immortal? He must have existed at least from the second ancient era until now. If that's true, then the bookstore owner must have lived through that mythical era, or maybe it's possible. Is a mythical person. Vincent looked at Lin Ji's face, half in darkness and half in light, thinking, so he has existed for even longer than the Dome Church. That is, to tell the stories of those vague old times from the extinguishing of the sun to the destruction of the giants. Until the rise of man. He has witnessed this mass change with his own eyes. Vincent looked at the book in front of him. So regarding the truth of the sun and moonlight, he must know very well. And this book, Solar Scripture, is proof. Everything is explained. I see, such an existence. The blind man he spoke of. Vincent could see the light shining down on Lin Ji. Could it be that they are mocking the people of the Dome Church? Whose eyes are blind and confused, unable to see the true God, blindly worshipping an empty shell? Why? It's true that the more I think about it, the more I feel scared. In just a few sentences, I have to spend a lot of time to understand the cowardice and ignorance what's going on. At this moment, Lin Ji spoke. No need to rush, no need to be confused. Priest, you will find your answer in this book. Find the light that belongs to you, and all your questions will eventually be answered. The answer, you just need to be willing to look for it. Lin Ji sat on the edge of the chair looking at him from below very strangely. If you agree and are determined, then I will also give you the corresponding help. Lin Ji's eyes narrowed as he looked at Vincent sitting across from him. In this matter, the victim is the priest in front of me. Whether you want to participate in the final investigation or not depends mainly on what the other person thinks. The power of the Dome Church is not small, and it is also the belief of this priest. If the opponent chooses to give up for his own benefit and safety, or even betray his own beliefs, then I don't find it strange. But according to my immediate observations, the priest in front of me is not that kind of person. On the contrary, his expression looks very troubled and very confused. Lin Ji looked at Vincent holding thought tightly to the book in his hand, but he held the book tightly in his hand with no intention of putting it down. Lin Ji smiled. This proved that he actually had a decision in his heart. I just need someone else to show me the guide. But in the current situation, there is only one person who can become his guide. Vincent pursed his lips and thought. The owner of the bookstore is the guide I've been waiting for. Outside, thunder and lightning, heavy raindrops fell from the sky and fell again on Noken City. In the room, Lin Ji and Vincent sat facing each other, half in darkness and the other half in light. Vincent thought to himself, now that I think about it, the commission from the owner of that media store next door must have been the result. The last bookstore owner created. The natural way this mystery lured me here was through conversation that shook my perception. So it was reasonable to sell me this important book. It's really like gently controlling fate. Vincent's eyes behind the black cloth shrank. Did he give me this book to tell me to find the light? Vincent sat still in place and imagined the image of Lin Ji as a red figure with a devilish smile. Above Lin Ji's head exuding a red aura. Could it be that he wants to take this opportunity to repeat the distorted history in order? On one's own, Vincent covered his face. His face was grey and his whole body trembled. Thinking, truly scary, these big figures, while Lin Ji sat opposite. Looking at Vincent's reaction, it was extremely difficult to understand. Vincent looked. The monster statue on the table trembled as he thought. The current situation, if I refuse, I feel that the outcome will not be to become part of the soul inside the Devil's Stone, but to become fertilizer for roses. Now I understand that just now letting me come into contact with them was actually a warning. Vincent's hand placed on his thigh tightly, so there's only one way I can go. Let alone I'm really wanting to know what the truth is behind everything. The moonlight hanging above gradually disappears. The circling corpses are slowly stealing the moon. Why does the church allow the circulation of narcotics that lead to hallucinations? Along with its beliefs that end up as ashes. Is it the end of the sun, or is it a false god stealing power? If accepting this book, sun scripture, means being able to accept part of the truth. Vincent placed his hand on his chest and said to Lin Ji, I understand. It's an honor to have your help. I want to know the truth. This is the only urgent wish in my heart right now. Lin Ji smiled as if the selling goal had been achieved. Book, as expected. Lin Ji stood up from the chair and said, you have such enlightenment. It means you already have a direction in your heart. Very good, but you still have more work to do. If you want to know the truth, you have to rely on yourself. Lin Ji blinked an eye and looked at Vincent thinking, but now this matter is also related to the Ash Merchant Guild. It seems like the problem is more complicated. In fact, maybe there is a way to solve it compared to having two people. Me and the priest. Go investigate. In fact, it will be more convenient. Lin Ji walked back to the chair inside the table and sat down thinking, Lean, according to my understanding of Kiri, she is not this type of person. That is to say, a traitor appeared in the Ash Chamber of Commerce that damaged the reputation of the Merchant Guild. I am sure that Kiri will be interested in her. Lin Ji remembered a certain Kiri girl. Lin Ji was very satisfied with his thoughts. Lin Ji said, I will go ask that Kiri child. What is the story of Saint Nawet Lao? And Vincent sat opposite and heard Lin Ji mention Kiri's name without any worries. Thinking, Kiri Chapman, is talking about Chapman's witch who emerged as a legend. Is she now a girl with such power? Vincent thought of Kiri, the boss of the Ash Merchant Guild, the Merchant Guild controlled by the Druid priest. They have very few people and the threshold is very high. They rarely organize large-scale missionary activities. But as a sect that cooperates with the Dome Church, they still pay special attention to the Ash Chamber of Commerce. Especially the Kiri's rise is beyond legendary. Her origin as an illegitimate child mixed with a dark spirit is also extremely controversial. Vincent's eyes widened slightly. So, even a small character like me usually won't come into contact with a big character. Other forces also know the name of this new president. Vincent trembled even more and sat opposite, tightening his body. The owner of the bookstore calls this big character a child, and even has a somewhat friendly attitude, which proves that the relationship between him and Kiri is not normal. He could easily ask the other party to investigate and work for him. I'm afraid it's something related to the internal affairs of the Ash Chamber of Commerce, and even though rumors say that Kiri's appearance still makes him look like an 11 or 12-year-old child. But in reality her lifespan is over 100 years old. Immortals are no longer carefree and thoughtless living in the forest like before, leading to mental retardation. Vincent can imagine Kiri sitting in the chair of the 100-year-old Merchant Guild. Hers is 100 years of experience with real products. Real prices. Otherwise, even if Kiri is really like the rumors that have the power to manipulate people's hearts, she certainly cannot occupy a position in a giant organization like the Ash Chamber of Commerce. It seems my previous guess was true. The bookstore owner is definitely an immortal. Lin Ji sat opposite, looking at Vincent's bewildered assessment of her. Vincent was still busy thinking about himself. That's right, this is a good opportunity if Chapman's witch has an unusual relationship with her master. If this bookstore is real, maybe it will gain some favor. After thinking about it, Vincent spoke up and praised. Miss Chapman is very wonderful. Vincent raised his voice very loudly. The achievements she has achieved at the Ash Merchant Guild these past few years really make others feel very wonderful and wonderful. Well, it's really wonderful. Lin Ji looked at Vincent in bewilderment. Then Vincent also discovered that he was a bit too much. The two of them silently looked at each other. Vincent on this side covered his face in embarrassment and thought to himself, it's over. But I really can't think of any words to compliment someone. I already knew that. After practicing every day because I'm not good at speaking during missions. I always ask nuns and other missionaries to do the work. Vincent began to feel foolish. I can only pray that the bookstore owner's profound wisdom can see through the true thoughts in my stupid words. Lin Ji sat in front of the mirror. His face was in the dark and he was silent, saying nothing. Then Lin Ji smiled brightly. Is clearly still a child who doesn't understand things. Before, when she was selling books at my place, she was still crying, but she is indeed very talented. A lovely child with a personality. It seems I'm much more mature now. Vincent, on the other side, breathed a sigh of relief and thought, that's great. The bookstore owner's smile is like a parent hearing someone else praise their child's achievements. It seems like my compliment has touched my heart already from him. Maybe I also know how to compliment others. It turns out that President is also one of the bookstore's customers. And his relationship with the bookstore owner is not bad. Double Vincent's eyes narrowed slightly as he thought. But crybaby, is this word really used to describe that Chapman witch? I feel like I've glimpsed something terrible. Kiri lady at this moment. The Chapman witch who scared many people is now hit on the head and is holding Bella crying saying, Bella. I was dozing off when I hit my head. It hurts so much. Bella must be safe. Comforted his little lady, master. Wait a minute. Let me go get the medicine. If next time you don't hug your pillow and roll around, you probably won't hit your head. Back to the present for a moment. Lin Ji said, in short. From the Ash Merchant Guild I will ask Kiri to investigate. Lin Ji sat cross-legged and looked at Vincent, but after you return, pay attention to the people who use this smoke like you did before. Investigate a little about the similarities of their symptom response absorption amounts. And you should try contacting the seventh apostle you mentioned. Tell her about your abnormalities. Don't hid it. Vincent asked a little worriedly, will this kill a snake? Lin Ji said, it's okay. What you have to be careful about is the side effect of revealing that you stopped taking the medicine. If they gave the Holy Moon Old Man to so many clerics, then surely something unusual happened to you. Not only a shadow fell as if comforting Vincent's dark shadow, don't worry. This thing can't be, you can't avoid the risk. After all, their goal is not to kill you, but just to make you addicted. If you show sincerity, otherwise they will be suspicious and will only continue to plot. Just reassure and brainwash you. On the contrary, if you show hesitation or plot to hide something, on the contrary, we will realize that something is not right, and we will no longer have absolute trust in them. Do you understand? Vincent sitting opposite replied, I see. Lin Ji quickly stood up and said, good. The time is not early, priest. Lin Ji looked at Vincent opposite and said, don't let my good neighbor Colin wait too long. He's still waiting for the results of your evil spirit exorcism. If you stay the night at my place, he'll call the police. You already know how to answer him, right? Lin Ji leaned closer to Vincent and said, remember to keep your will. You will have the light. After Vincent finished paying, Lin Ji sat in his seat waving goodbye to Vincent. Welcome time come again. The door was closed. Vincent stepped on the rainwater and went out. Vincent sat down on his knees as soon as he walked out of the bookstore. Vincent gasped and thought, this is so scary. Vincent's whole face was wet with rainwater. He held the book in his hand and thought to himself, I swear. This is definitely the most sensational and stimulating process of exorcising evil spirits I have ever experienced. Now I have to think about it. Reassure poor Mr. Colin. I accidentally discovered the neighbor's unusual truth. At this time, when Vincent could not react, he stepped on rainwater with a step and walked over. A woman asked in a loud voice. When seeing Vincent, priest of the Dome Church, Vincent was startled and confused. Vincent raised his head and shouted, "Who?" Vincent looked at the figure in the distance. A figure was standing in the distance holding an umbrella. Vincent's eyes flashed, the smell of blood streaked straight into my nose and this gloomy chill. Vincent could see the red figure standing under the rain with an umbrella through the black cloth. Vincent thought, strong hunter at crisis level. Maybe even more than that. There is a pair of hands holding 2 books with covers full of tentacles. The door closed and the bell rang. Lin Ji sat back in the chair, stretched her arms out, thinking, it's another day of doing good deeds. But helping others for fun is really very addictive. After being addicted, I feel a bit thirsty. Right now Lin Ji raised her voice and called out to Moon, who was hiding in a corner. Baby Moon, stop hiding. Come out here, I see you. Moon was hiding in the corner of the wall, scared. Startled, she stuck her head out to look at Lin Ji and called out, shop owner. Aren't you angry anymore? Lin Ji sat with her hands on the table like a teacher telling her, angry. What anger? Why would I be angry with our cute little Moon? Unless he did something bad. Moon holding the tea tray in her hand. She rushed towards Lin Ji and replied. You're very good. Lin Ji said. That's it. I reminded you to prepare the water first. Lin Ji held the cold cup of tea on the table. Her face he reflected in the cup and thought to himself. As expected, after talking for so long, the tea has already cooled down. Although it's a pity, drinking cold tea is not good for your health. The taste is also much worse. Lin Ji took the cup away looking at Moon. He said, Moon brewed another pot of hot tea, using the delicious tea leaves that you usually keep in that box. Moon heard this and asked, shop owner, aren't you saying that that box of tea is very precious and not important? Can't you bring it out to drink? Lin Ji smiled, maybe in a while there will be a distinguished guest coming to inquire. Moon heard that and replied, so that's it. I understand. Moon seemed to regain vitality and said, I'll go make tea for the guests right away. At this time Lin Ji said, if there really are guests coming then that's good. After the Moon left like a wind, Lin Ji sat with her hands on the table thinking, if there really are guests coming then that's good. It's reasonable to drink some delicious tea from time to time. Right? Lin Ji dizzy eye blinked an eye and thought, besides, since advising the priest is quite hard, shouldn't we reward ourselves a little? Maybe tonight because that priest will have a good night's sleep. Sir, relax. Is that possible? And a certain priest outside is now so scared that he's foaming at the mouth. Vincent looked at the black shadow exuding a red aura opposite. Standing in the rain Vincent trembled and thought, this unique smell of blood. There's no mistaking the breath of dirty blood that only hunters have. Vincent can imagine that red and black shadow is a devilish wolf, but this hunter's breath is terrible, never seen before. Within his scope of observation, she was like a steel furnace that used blood as fuel, with boiling hot blood strongly invading the container, running and screaming all over her body. Is filled with terrifying menace that makes people's hair stand on end. Vincent's pupils flashed behind the black cloth, it must be a beast with a human head. Vincent clenched his teeth. That aura was vaguely not good. The feeling of being suppressed side effects of the holy moon has appeared. It's getting worse. Vincent could recognize, I am now like a prey being stared at in a deep dark forest. Vincent's other survival instincts are frantically sending out warnings. Danger. Vincent is afraid to move forward. Vincent can imagine, this hunter is even scarier than the gargoyles in the bookstore. How about saying that gargoyle is weaker? Quote. Vincent remembered the monster statue in Lin Ji's bookstore. Now he was 1,000 times more scared. Vincent crouched down trying to catch his breath, dizzy. Nauseous. Can't breathe anymore. Use magic to reduce the feeling a bit first. Vincent calmly reached into his shirt and searched for the string my beloved necklace. But Vincent went from calm to grey-faced. Vincent's mouth opened wide. His eyes turned red. Where is my holy name? At the same moment in the bookstore, Lin Ji was sitting back in the chair with her hands supporting her head, humming a song, while the moon-shaped necklace was left lying on the table crying without tears. Vincent at outside. It was raining heavily. Vincent said, it's hopeless. Vincent imagines a red wolf coming closer to him. Already there's no way to resist. being a priest who doesn't participate in battle and has no means of connecting to the level. The opponent is higher than me and is famous crazy hunter. This match hasn't even started yet and it's already over. Vincent was scared. He put the book in front of him. At this moment Vincent realized something. He thought to himself, that's right. Just now at the bookstore the holy name also showed his will to submit but also demonstrated his strength. The power of this book and the power of moonlight are of the same origin. Perhaps. Vincent seemed to realize something. No matter what. You can't escape. Come. This is my last moonlight divine power. Vincent raised the book and shouted loudly, Moonlight. Please shine, give me. Vincent held the book up high and wanted to pray to the moonlight. At this moment a pair of hands reached out to stop Vincent. A voice said, don't be so nervous. Priest. A smile appeared in the light. Eyes sunk in darkness. The girl smiled and said, I didn't mean it. I was just a little curious about the new guest. The girl showing her beautiful face is Ji Jishu. Isn't she? Looked at Vincent opposite and said, we are all customers of the bookstore. We should get along with each other. Otherwise Mr. Lin will not be happy. Vincent's eyes behind the black cloth flashed, thinking, your customer's bookstore. Ji Jishu was still smiling as she walked past Vincent. Vincent could feel the red aura flying around him. Vincent stood still without moving. When he had walked a while, Ji Jishu turned his head slightly and glanced at Vincent. Her yellow pupils flashing slightly. She spoke, very good. It seems that Mr. Lin takes you very seriously. Vincent heard that. He turned his head to look at the girl. But when Vincent turned his back, he could no longer see the girl's silhouette. Vincent stood silently in the rain. Vincent was startled. He was breathing heavily. He was a bit startled. Unexpectedly, Vincent raised the book and asked, is that really possible? Raindrops fell on the road. Vincent's silhouette reflected in the water. Thinking, this is the right time to use my body. I already feel the connection between the two of you. Luckily this was just a fluke. Vincent imagined Ji Jishu, Wild, Joseph, Doris. I didn't think about it before and now I definitely think about that bookstore. There are many other customers like me right now. Hunters. Maybe there are witches, knights, even other powerful people like that. The bookstore owner wants to manipulate. Some things seem very that's easy. Vincent put the book in his pocket. The hunter just now obviously went to visit the bookstore owner. Now I'm turning around and saying that if I just drop the holy name. I'm a bit embarrassed. Vincent choose and go. He thought, forget it. Next time you come, take it with you. Anyway, I don't have any more tasks except this commission recently. Just a while ago I decided to rest for a while. That's right. I still have to send a message to that unlucky entruster. Ji Jishu on this side holding an umbrella under the rain. She smiled and thought to herself, unexpectedly. On the way to visit the bookstore owner, she happened to meet a lover. Such an interesting detail. Priest of the Dome Church. Perhaps the shop owner intends to train this priest like me at first. Ji Jishu's mind consciously analyzed Lin Ji's actions, but the current stage takes the fastest speed. Making spiders gaining a solid foothold in the hunter force is the most important thing. There is no way for an ordinary level priest to become a support in the immediate future. Ji Jishu's eyes flashed. First meeting left an impression. It's okay to have a good impression. Being too enthusiastic will probably result in punishment. But through this short contact I seem to have felt the feeling of Wild taking care of me. How should I put it? There is truly a strange feeling of excitement. Ji Jishu walked under the umbrella under the rain while thinking about some things. I must have initially reacted like a priest meeting a supernatural person of a far superior level. Personally, like a little mouse being scared by a cat. If we change the perspective, this experience is quite thrilling. Ji Jishu's breasts exposed, with the help of my shop owner now compared to before. I'm much more mature. It's a mat that's spread out and it's hard to avoid the feeling above. Books piled high on top of each other, people of different professions. From witches to goblins, priests, to hunters, to knights. Yet all the forces have once met in this bookstore. Truly unbelievable. We are inherently unrelated to each other. Because became a customer of this bookstore and had a magical relationship. Ji Jishu held an umbrella under the rain, humming an unknown song in his heart. Thinking, this relationship can probably be called book friends, right? In the future, perhaps there will be even deeper ties. Ji Jishu's clogged feet stood in front of the iron door. Ji Jishu looked up at the bookstore, after the magic mirror egg storm ended not long ago. This is the first time I've been back here in many days. Ji Jishu looked at the bookstore nostalgically and reached out to touch the door. I'm so embarrassed I can only ask for help from the bookstore owner. I hope the store owner won't feel inconvenienced by my sudden visit. In the bookstore, Moon finished making the tea and brought it to Lin Ji. She said, the owner of the tea shop has finished brewing it. Lin Ji smiled brightly like a flower and replied, thank you. The tea was poured into a cup with her face. Lin Ji reflected in the teacup with a grin on her face. Lin Ji thought to herself, yes, delicious tea leaves smell different. Smelling this refreshing aroma is also a kind of enjoyment that can't help but take a sip to satisfy. Let's quench my thirst. At this moment the bookstore door was opened again. A shadowy figure appeared. The light shining inside the bookstore. Ji Jishu retracted his umbrella and looked at Lin Ji with a smile on her face, blushing slightly and saying, Mr. Lin. Long time no see. Lin Ji heard the call. His eyes lit up and he looked over. Lin Ji pushed the teacup forward. The hot smoke of the teacup flew up. Lin Ji Bloom smiled and raised his hand to say to Ji Jishu, long time no see Miss Ji, have you finished reading the 2 books you borrowed earlier? This time you didn't make me wait too long. Cup of tea emitting smoke. Lin Ji said, long time no see Miss Ji. Have you finished reading the 2 books you borrowed from me before? This time you won't let me wait too long. Ji Jishu took off her cloak. Her eyes glanced at Lin Ji. She looked at the cup of tea on the table and thought, as expected. Mr. Lin predicted that I would visit. Don't let me wait too long, maybe it's some kind of joke from Mr. Lin. Ji Jishu smiled without seeing her eyes. She hung her coat on the chair and smiled at Lin Ji. I'm sorry Mr. Lin. It looks like it's time I came to visit just in time. Lin Ji also smiled brightly and replied, indeed. He thought to himself, if it's not at the right time. Just give me a sip of water. Ko-moon at the side. The whole person was filled with enthusiasm, looking at the 2 people sitting opposite, smiling and talking to each other, thinking, eldest lady, it sounds very powerful, so that's it, this eldest lady hunter, it must be an important customer that the shop owner is waiting for. As expected of the shop owner, all things are in his calculations. Ji Jishu placed 2 books on the table and said, the 1-month deadline has come. So I came here to return these 2 books. Ji Jishu explained, adding, but based on my realm, it is very difficult to fully understand the content. The distance to understanding is very far and there is still a long stretch. Furthermore, I also want to spread this power to those around me. Ji Jishu didn't sit down on the chair right away but lifted her hair and looked at Lin Ji a little shyly and said, so even though I'm shy, can I borrow these 2 books for a while? Lin Ji reached out to pull out his drawer. He smiled and said, of course it's okay. Lin Ji raised his hand to explain to Ji Jishu, you've done it to this level, that's not bad. If you can master these 2 books and understand everything contained in them, for you it will be a great benefit for a lifetime. There are many people who read so many books but in reality I don't understand anything. Ji Jishu closed his eyes and replied to Lin Ji, understood. Ji Jishu signed his name on the book loan paper and thought to himself, the bookstore owner is right. I only understand the power of these 2 books. I have grown so fast. I never dared to think about it before. The girl's eyes looked up. Her eyes seemed to think of Wilde and Burton. She seemed to see 2 figures as big as mountains in front of her. It seemed has reached an unimaginable level of destruction. Now for me, I just need to work hard to climb to reach the top of the mountain. Ji Jishu reached out to hold a cup of tea. This is just the beginning. If you understand what they say, it's hard to imagine what kind of realm can I achieve. Just thinking about it makes me so excited that my whole body is boiling. Ji Jishu held a cup of hot tea and gulped it down. Lin Ji looked on with wide eyes. He was startled because the cup of tea was still hot and she drank it very calmly. Lin Ji sat there with her hands on the table, her whole body trembling, thinking, okay, how could I forget Miss Ji's amazing bones? God's gift is already there. Between people and people, it really can't be all together. A mortal like me can't compare to that person's fiery spirit of saying, do it. Do it. Maybe she can do what she just said. At this moment, when Ji Jishu just put down the teacup, it was filled again. Moon stood next to him and said, important guest, please drink. Moon held a cup of tea and a pot of tea and brought it to Ji Jishu, saying in a matter-of-fact voice. The shop owner said, this tea was prepared for you. That's enough. Over. Lin Ji on the other side listened and learned. As for Ji Jishu over here, Hearing that was so happy he said, "Thank you." At this time Lin Ji remembered that he hadn't introduced Moon yet. Lin Ji pointed at Moon to introduce. "Ah, that's right. I forgot to introduce this baby. The name is Moon, my new assistant." Ji Jishu hearing that his pupils narrowed as he looked at Moon thinking, "Assistant?" Ji Jishu commented, "The appearance is neither big nor small. Looks quite cute." Listening to Mr. Lin's tone is quite pampering. In Ji Jishu's yellow pupils reflects the image of Moon clearly, and the aura on her body is also very special. Not like humans but on the contrary like a cold plastic steel product. Ji Jishu raised his hand to wave and said, "Hello." Ji Jishu said, "I'm very good. What about you?" Moon stood still and couldn't respond. Lin Ji quickly stood up to relieve him and said, "This child still doesn't know how to communicate with others. Conversations with others are usually based on books. Then I will teach her about human communication. Don't pay attention. Don't pay attention." Lin Ji, because he didn't want the story to be diverted, he said back to the main topic, "This time you came back to find me. Not just to borrow 2 books. Right?" Lin Ji gave me a like mark in her heart. Thinking, suggestive. A little idea would be great. Wouldn't it be great to introduce some good books? It's time to come so we can't let guests have a useless visit. Right? And Ji Jishu heard what Lin Ji said. She suddenly woke up and thought to herself. As expected of Mr. Lin. I already knew my purpose here. Ji Jishu took something out of his cloak. Ji Jishu put a box on the table. She said, "Mr. Lin, I have finished my revenge. Thank you for your guidance. But then there are still a few things to deal with." Ji Jishu pushed the other box back to Lin Ji. She said in a pleading tone, "I want your help to open this box." Lin Ji sat opposite, and after listening, her whole body turned into a stone statue with blood flowing out. Her head was full of questions and she thought to herself, "Isn't this true? Why isn't this the way I thought it was?" With that being said, the eldest lady finally relied on it. "In my determination to take revenge on that scum." Lin Ji looked at the glowing box in front of her and thought to herself, "This box is a nuisance after the incident. Wow, this box is very sophisticated with a strange and unique design and very precious. Surely someone can trap me. This girl is not from the ordinary class." Lin Ji pondered in her heart. Could it be that inside is a love token or a photo of some kind? Lin Ji squinted his eyes, evaluating the box in his heart. It also means that this box could be a safe. Lin Ji asked, "Is this what he left behind?" Lin Ji slightly squinted her eyes and pouted her lips, thinking to herself, making the safe look like a treasure chest for this scum is rotten enough. While Ji Jishu looked at Lin Ji's face and thought, "Oh no, even though I don't seem to like it very much. Could it be that the seal on this box is simply asking the shop owner for help? This is just a matter of big trouble being torn apart with a buffalo knife." Ji Jishu evaluated Lin Ji in front of him in his heart, but the first formula of dirty blood is the basic foundation of hunters. Helix did not forget to bring the formula in his craziness. It can be seen that he very confident in the safety of this box. Her hand clutched her skirt, an important rune formula sealed on the box that a careful person can confidently choose is absolutely not simple. But for the shop owner, it's not certain. Ji Jishu explained in his voice, "Yes, this is his relic. But for the shop owner, it's a matter of mosquitoes. But for me, how to deal with it is a very important step." Ji Jishu placed his hand on his chest and said to Lin Ji, "Please help me with this. I will take everything of mine to repay you." Lin Ji faced him with a smile. He smiled wryly and thought to himself, "The relics that leave behind the grudges of those with money are mostly missing a few cement pillars and corpses. A person who dares to deceive the exclusive lady must also think that he will end up in trouble. What is the situation like?" Lin Ji can imagine a man with his face completely covered, tied with ropes and tied to a pole awaiting execution. Lin Ji clasped his hands and prayed for the man, and in his heart can struggle many times. To be honest, 10 minutes is already poor. I hope he has sincerely repented when he leaves. While Moon next to him continuously pours tea. Lin Ji put her hand on the box. He said, "Everything is no longer needed. But this box is quite meaningful. Besides, I don't need your so-called repayment. At first I guided you just because you needed guidance." Ji Jishu heard that. Her eyes widened and her cheeks turned red. Ji Jishu said at the end, "I said the wrong thing. Sorry," Lin Ji replied with a narrowed smile. "Hey, there's nothing to apologize for. Remember to come and read a book." It's okay to do it often. Lin Ji on this side clutched her skirt and thought to herself, it's so stupid. Isn't everything I have now something that Mr. Lin gave me in return? If I know how to think, I should have given everything to Mr. Lin. And Lin Ji, on the other hand, secretly thought, looking at this gesture, it must be time to have a happy healing conversation. Learn about the problem, the specific topic first. Lin Ji pushed the box towards Moon and said, come on. Moon, keep this box for a while. Moon replied, After Moon received the box, Lin Ji thought for a while, talking about me, I'm a little curious as to why this young lady came to me to open the lock. Of course, the first reason is that she trusts me very much. On the other hand, it seems like there aren't many people this eldest lady trusts. At this moment Lin Ji's eyes flashed, that's right, last time she went to the bookstore. Lin Ji remembered Ryan's last visit to the bookstore. The subordinate she brought at that time just said she could completely trust after that. I just lost half of what I said and lost my mind. According to my guess, that guy seems to have come back to report the rebellious behavior of the eldest lady. Lin Ji imagined Ji Jishu being imprisoned in a cage like a bird, secretly thinking. Even my subordinates dare to face and report. This young lady is not as free as she imagined. She has always lived in her father's hidden shadow. In this situation, she is truly helpless, with a lack of people to trust. She must now have a deep conflict with her family, or else how could she end up meeting that scumbag? Lin Ji also especially thought of Li Bonong, especially Mr. Master Li. Gentleman Bonong, I wonder if he found his daughter last time to talk. Moon was on the side studying the box while Lin Ji was on this side asking Ji Jishu, that's right. I have a problem, Ji miss. Did you come to talk to me? Ji Jishu on this side opened his eyes wide thinking, it's not surprising that Mr. Lin knows this. Ji Jishu put his hand on his chest and said, yes, he came to talk to me just now. But clearly he still thinks of me as a child. I'm already grown up. Lin Ji heard that and smiled, thinking, this tone is a bit proud. It seems that this time father and son talk not bad. Lin Ji said with a smile, it seems you have successfully persuaded him. Congratulations. Ji Jishu clenched his fists, his eyes flashing with light, and said to Lin Ji as if boasting, that's right, I successfully persuaded him to take my side. He said he needed to find time to come personally talk to me about books in the shop and business journey. Please forgive me for my policy. Give him some suggestions, otherwise he won't act for me. Lin Ji on this side with a wrinkled face like old Uncle Lin Ji kept his face frozen for several minutes straight. Then Lin Ji said, a voice. Lin Ji trembled all over and asked herself in her heart, wait. What did you say to your father? Young lady. Lin Ji looked at Ji Jishu opposite her, who was holding up her finger with sparkling eyes. Looking at myself, I thought to myself, why would a good boss trick his daughter into being crippled? Don't blame me for being nervous. How can a bookseller in a small bookstore like me be cooperated by the richest person in Nokia? It's unreasonable to say this ethically. Lin Ji imagined a rich gentleman coming to shake her hand and ask to cooperate with her, although it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's definitely a troublesome thing. It's not there is room left over for official cooperation. At best it doesn't have to involve some investment capital or something. Lin Ji's whole body trembled. Ji Jishu standing opposite was extremely questioning. Lin Ji thought to himself, but anyway it's also the intention of the eldest lady. Stay calm first and then change as you like. Lin Ji replied, okay, I know, but you still need to train a few people you trust. Right, you can always look to me for things like this. Ji Jishu's lips pursed, she said with a hesitant voice, me. Ji Jishu stood silently, she could imagine the enormous figure of Lin Ji in her mind. I always feel like the shop owner's eyes looking at me are like watching an immature child do something untrustworthy. Could it really be that easy to unlock this box? But at this stage one have no other choice. Ji Jishu's hand placed next to her tightly clenched, although I can really find a witch at home to open the box. However, what happens to last time Ryan warned me that the White Wizard's loyalty was no longer trustworthy. There was no other way, but I chose to go to the bookstore to seek help. Perhaps as the bookstore owner said, I had to start training a few assistants who were trustworthy enough. Just when Ji Jishu was lost in her own thoughts, suddenly her eyes opened wide. Ji Jishu and Lin Ji looked over and saw that the box was emitting a red light. The box was in Moon's hand and she easily opened it. The lock flashed. Moon bewilderedly held the box and said to the two people Lin Ji, if I wasn't careful, I would have opened it. Lin Ji and Ji Jishu both gasped in surprise. Looking at Moon, Moon trembled slightly. She said, I accidentally opened my eyes. And Ji Jishu looked at the opened box. His whole body seemed to be struck by lightning. His eyes widened and he thought, is it that easy to open? Ji Jishu's eyes opened wide, staring at the box of sweat that couldn't stop flowing. In Ji Jishu's eyes, the box in his hand was filled with streams of blood. Ji Jishu looked bewildered as Moon held the box with blood flowing out all over Moon's feet so much that it covered Moon's feet. In that stream of red blood, a giant skull appeared screaming. Ji Jishu quickly covered his eyes to avoid the dirty blood. But the blood poured down on Ji Jishu like heavy wet rain. Ji Jishu screamed, what the hell is this? Ji Jishu trembled and looked at his hand. Ji Jishu was startled and looked at his bloodless hand and asked himself in his heart, was that an illusion just now? Ji Jishu tremblingly looked at the Moon. As for Lin Ji, she was also filled with pain and questions. Looking at Ji Jishu and thinking, what happened? I just gave the things to Moon for temporary storage and didn't look at them for a few minutes. Why did she already open the box? But thinking back, after being saved by me, this child became curious about everyday objects and wanted to touch everything. Yes, we can tell that our baby Moon was very confused. He picked up the kettle and asked. Then the pan. Then Moon touched the monster statue. Then she held the knife. At that time Lin Ji had to stop the sky to stop the Moon. He thought, now give it to him. An item like this assembled toy is like hitting a dog with a dumpling and not coming back. With a perverted learning spirit. It's not strange to be able to open this box. Moon holding the box, standing still over there, her whole body was sweating and not daring to move. While Lin Ji over here thought, if you open it, it's open. Anyway, Miss Ji asked to open this box. It's just a kid. This person without permission automatically entered someone else's belongings and it was left behind by a traman. Perhaps it's a black history to threaten and make Miss Ji feel comfortable. Lin face Ji turned black. He looked at Moon with two red eyes. His whole body emitted a black aura, making Moon startled. Lin Ji thought to herself, we can't raise this child to have such a bad habit. We'll have to apologize later, just be nice. Moon trembled and placed the other box on the table, holding her hand behind her back and holding it tightly. She fiddled with her fingers, glanced at Lin Ji and said, I just want to try it out. Ji Jishu on the opposite side. He seemed to have turned into a cat, always looking at the Moon and thinking, the kid just wants to try it out. Is this a test in and out and then open directly? Ji Jishu looked at the box with a complex structure on the table that was opened easily, even if the sealing seal on this box is really simple. The number of seals is not small, so it must be understood. Mastering every part of the clouds like a white witch master can open it. Ji Jishu imagined Moon as a little white witch master holding a very high cross. Could it be that this girl who looks like she is neither too old nor too young is a white monk who is skilled in the art of runes? Ji Jishu on this side smiled, emitting sparkling light, deducing in his heart, yes. If you can be a bookstore assistant, how can you be is it okay for a normal person? So that's it, just thinking about it and thinking it through. It's better to say it's all natural, not worthy of being Mr. Lin's assistant. And Lin Ji and Moon were on this side, looking at the light and smile of Ji Jishu with wonder. Lin Ji pushed the other box towards Ji Jishu, sighed and said, it's so embarrassing. Children don't understand things. I'm sorry for them. Lin Ji closed her eyes and explained. His thinking is not yet complete. Although he is very talented in everything, he still lacks knowledge. Basically, I didn't teach him enough before. In the future I will teach him again how to treat others. Moon next to him placed his hands in front of his chest in silence. Then Moon followed Lin Ji's words and replied, yes. Also Ji Jishu on this side, looking at the box in front of his eyes. His whole body trembled and thinking, your child is moving around and can easily solve the puzzle on the box that stored the original formula that Helix carefully store it. This is even scarier than trying a little. At this moment Ji Jishu seemed startled. She seemed to understand something. Wait. Earlier Mr. Lin seemed to say that this little girl who seems to be a white wizard is him. Even though I'm teaching myself, my thinking hasn't yet fully completed the basic knowledge. Plus the feeling I had in that moment. Ji Jishu imagined Lin Ji wearing a black robe holding a stick with a head attached to it. For a long time around him, he walked among the dead bodies with severed limbs. He was slowly walking towards the moon lying in a pool of blood. Ji Jishu thought, could it be that this girl's true identity is? Ji Jishu's eyes broke out in cold sweat. She quickly closed her eyes and covered her eyes, thinking to herself, no, this thought is too scary. I can't stop anymore. Ji Jishu put his hand on his chest and smiled and said, it's okay. Mr. Lin is someone I respect and trust. So is your assistant. There's nothing to hide these things. Lin Ji heard Ji Jishu say, then he sighed and thought to himself. No wonder Miss Ji is being investigated. There's not even a bit of vigilance. I think Miss Ji and I have only met 3 times. Lin Ji's hands placed on top of each other and he rubbed them. Rubbing my fingers. I thought, even if this person Lin Mi is pure and trustworthy, the person next to me isn't sure. The cup of tea on the table emitted steaming smoke. Lin Ji put her hand in front of her chest and said, I remember, when I told you. Someone else was hell. Actually, I often said this to other people. But no one remembered it and in the end they all had to pay a heavy price for it. Ji Jishu heard that and placed his hands on both sides. Hips clenched tightly. Lin Ji continued, I hope you don't follow the same path. Remember how you felt when you were betrayed at first. Ji Jishu remained silent and did not speak. Lin Ji continued, I will punish you, punish Moon. You should still be a little careful. After all, this is your private item. Moon stood on the side as if being punished like being struck by lightning. While Ji Jishu was on this side imagining herself wearing the outfit sleeping coolly. Her neck was still handcuffed and she silently thought. But you didn't lie to me. You can't hide everything in front of you. There's no need to be cautious. I'm not in front of anyone. Like this. Ji Jishu closed her eyes and placed her hand on her chest saying, I will be careful. Thank you for your reminder. At this moment Ji Jishu's yellow pupils flashed with golden light. She looked at the box and Lin Ji sitting next to her. She thought to herself, but the strong also have the principles of the strong. Mr. Lin doesn't need to look to see what's in the box. Ji Jishu stood at attention in the bookstore, surrounded by thin black air. But maybe, no actually maybe I didn't pay attention to part of the original recipe. Just like Mr. Lin's existence for Mr. Lin. These things must have become familiar after seeing him a lot. Quote, Ji Jishu received her box back. She took out the tree in the middle, revealing that inside the box was a bottle of medicine containing blood. Ji Jishu was a little startled. She thought to herself, so beautiful, so evil, so powerful, so full of enchantment. Ji Jishu's mouth opened wide around her as if streams of fresh blood were flowing. This is the original formula of the impure blood that contains the power of dream beasts. The heart in Ji's body. Jishu couldn't beat any slower. Her heart was beating very fast. Thump thump, each sound echoed around. Ji Jishu like there was a wolf opening its mouth wide and screaming with saliva flowing like heaven eating meat. At this time Ji Jishu was suddenly startled awake. Her face was covered in sweat. She stood still looking at Lin Ji. And Moon opposite. What I felt just now was the instinctive bloodline of war because I had impure blood that also came from. That's why there's this excitement. Which means that the original formula in front of you is the real product at the real price. So you can rest assured. Ji Jishu raised his hand to touch the medicine tube there. Ji Jishu thought of his hunter friends in his hunter guild. Getting the original formula means that the original white wolf has completely perished. This also means that the hunter organization, my new generation, has already established its foundation. From today onwards we are the official. Ji Jishu's hand kept shaking. While Lin Ji on this side silently observed Ji Jishu. He reached out to receive the book that Moon gave, which was now in a box under a black cloth. Ji Jishu saw something appeared to her. A voice. Ji Jishu reached out and pulled the piece of paper up. Ji Jishu was startled and looked at the letter-like piece of paper. Ji Jishu asked silently in her heart, this is a paper letter. A total of 2 pages are secret letters written to Helix. Ji Jishu stepped back a little. She thought, no. Check immediately. It is not wise to check the contents of the letter. If this box is from the White Wizard, then these 2 letters also have the same possibility. If there is a cloud in the letter, you will fall into the trap. Quote, Ji Jishu held the letter in her hand, not daring to move. The thoughts in her heart flowed freely. The White Wizard's runes are like books in a library. Which also implies that just looking at them will affect your mind and soul. Ji Jishu put the other box on the table. She held the letter that Helix placed in the box. The original formula shows that these two letters are extremely important, even equal to the formula. But with the status of a successful person, establishing a hunter organization, no matter how you think about it, it cannot compare with the heart of the hunter leader and the formula. Ji Jishu's hand holding the sealed letter trembled continuously. What's even more strange is that if you want security, you can directly destroy these two letters without putting them in the box. Unless, Ji Jishu seemed to be standing in an endless dark space, unless the letter this is the origin of the original recipe. Ji Jishu opened her mouth and gasped, if that's really the case. Ji Jishu's eyes clearly saw Lin Ji's figure on the opposite side. She looked at Lin Ji, who was reading a book over there. And Moon was standing next to Lin Ji thinking. Mr. Lin no longer paid attention to this side but looked at the book himself. If Mr. Lin doesn't take any action, then it means there is no danger. That's for sure. Mr. Lin's attitude was to implicitly allow me to see these two letters. Perhaps he was checking to see if he was qualified to lead an organization to face the risks that could occur behind it. Or not. Ji Jishu reached out to remove the seal on the letter. Then I must not let him down. When Ji Jishu saw the first content of the letter, her whole body was shocked. Time to send to this letter is 30 years ago. From the same place to the same person. Ji Jishu saw the letter printed with a picture of a burning sword. The silhouette of Ji Jishu with the helix blocked by the sword. That sword, Helix, just became a hunter 30 years ago. 30 years later he became the leader of the White Wolves.